Good morning. I want to do a video today explaining what's wrong with Obamacare. This seems to be a very polarizing issue in this country, and it's about to get intensified again now that Senate Republicans are talking about putting a potential Obamacare repeal in with the Senate tax bill. And I support it because this law has failed America. It's a disaster all around. You got premiums to the roof. You got 5 states now that are down to one insurer. I mean, you got millions of people who still don't have health insurance. I mean, this bill's not doing what it was intended to do. And I would argue that it's because the Affordable Care Act never addressed the underlying issues with regard to our health care. Now, according to a November 2013 report in the Journal for the American Medical Association, between 2000 and 2011, 91% of the rise in healthcare costs could be attributed to rises in drug prices, medical devices, and hospital care. If you listen to Senate Democrats, you would never get that, because people like Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut and Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey and Senator Debbie Stabenow of Michigan and other Senate Democrats have repeatedly said that it wasn't what JAMA said, it was poor and sick people not having insurance and young people who were holding out on buying health insurance. I mean, they really said that. You can look it up. Now, if you look at the Affordable Care Act itself, it did nothing to address pharmaceutical companies, medical device manufacturers, or hospital care. And with regard to medical devices specifically, it cut the 2.3% tax on medical devices. Why were these people given a tax cut if they were making healthcare go through the roof? I mean, what was the thinking behind that? Now, to make things worse, the Affordable Care Act mandates that people buy health insurance, provide proof of a qualified health care plan in compliance with the Public Health Service Act. The Public Health Service Act is an outdated bill that was passed in 1941. Okay, why did Senate Democrats draft a healthcare bill to address 21st century problems and base it off a bill that was passed in 1941? Because this is why we're having problems now. Because if you look at the Public Health Service Act, its definition of a qualified health care plan largely excludes other forms of healthcare coverage like dental, vision, and life insurance. So guess what? Under the Affordable Care Act, because all the emphasis is put on medical insurance, when you file for your taxes every year, even if you do have dental and vision coverage through your employer, or you have an active life insurance policy out on yourself, because all the emphasis is put on medical insurance, you still get fined out the wazoo, even though you have those other forms of health coverage. And there's no exemption. So you're just stuck with it. So even though you got medical, dental, and vision coverage through your employer, because you don't have medical insurance, you still get fined. I mean, why are we doing this to people? It's stupid. Then you have the issue of there being no exemption for people who lose their health insurance temporarily. So let's say in beginning of January, you get laid off by your job and you lose your health insurance. You start a new job in March, but you got to wait until the beginning of the next month for your benefits to kick in. Well, guess what? Because there's no exemption for people who temporarily lose coverage, when that person goes to file for their taxes, they'll still get fined for not having insurance for January, February, and March, because there's no exemption for people who temporarily lose their insurance due to unemployment. I mean, why are we doing this to people? Better yet, to you watching this, why do you support a law which punishes people for not having insurance despite the circumstances? And then, I mean, it's stupid and it's unlawful. Because then you have the issue of the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment says that life, liberty, or property will not be denied except by due process. So what they did with the Affordable Care Act is not only they mandate that people buy insurance, but they said that if people don't buy insurance, that they are to pay a fine, which is collected in the form of a tax penalty. And I would argue that that is illegal, because you have the right to contest any fine you get in court. Okay, let's just say the cop pulls you over and gives you a ticket, and then he finds out something else and he gives you a fine for it. No matter how blatantly guilty you are, you still have the right to go to court and contest that fine. And a lot of times, if you're right, the judge might do away with that fine or that ticket you got, or they'll significantly reduce it. Well, guess what? Because the Democrats tried to be slick and write these Obamacare fines into the tax code, even though you got people out there who have serious circumstances that are causing them to not have health insurance, partly because of the failure of our government. Because it's written into the tax code, they can't contest it in court. And it's a blatant violation of the Fourth, the Fifth, and the Eighth Amendment. Point blank. Now, why are we doing this to people? And to you watching this, why do you support a law which fines people for not having health insurance, and does so in a way that these people can't even have the basic right of contesting it in court? Why do you support that? Now, what would you say to me if I said that you are like Senator Murphy, Senator Booker, and Senator Stabenow, and that you support punishing poor and sick people and young people trying to make it in the world just because they don't have health insurance? To me, what would you say? What would you say to the single parent mother living in the inner city in Chicago who's being fined every year for not having health insurance? What would you tell her? Because that's a problem we have. Because guess what? Not only do you get fined, but if you have children, you get fined an additional penalty for each child that you have that's uninsured. Why do you support that? I think it's time that Congress do the right thing and get rid of this law. And it needs to come now. It's lived its course. It's failed America. And it's failed the issue of the opioid crisis, because guess what? Even though it mandated that people have health insurance in compliance with the Public Health Service Act, the Democrats didn't repeal the Public Health Service Act's outdated definition of substance abuse. We now have an opioid crisis going on. I would encourage you to think about these things. Bye.